You know, when it comes to the Vince McMahon retirement, everybody makes comparisons to a lot of things that Vince survived. A lot of controversies, allegations, and stuff that he has survived in the past. The steroids trial, he survived, won that, beat the government. WCW, looked like he was on the verge of losing everything, came back, beat them, bought them out. Same with ECW, came back, beat them, bought them out. Then and then in between there, you have the Owen Hart situation. Survived that, even though Martha still holds that over his head. Then, on top of that, you have the Benoit situation. Survived that. And then you have all the other controversies in between. You know, and somehow he survived that. And recently he even had a lawsuit against him from a former XFL associate thrown out. And yet, despite surviving all that, it's this right here. These sexual allegations that the board is investigating, that's been leaked to the Wall Street Journal, that was basically picked up by every single source of news media you can think of, that causes him to finally decide to hang it up. And you know what this kind of strangely reminds me of? And Lord, forgive me for making this comparison. It strangely reminds me of David versus Goliath. And again, God, forgive me for making this comparison. But the reason it strangely reminds me of that is because Vince obviously had this ego that nothing can touch him. I mean, the reports coming out that when he made that appearance on SmackDown, the day the first of these allegations came out, according to reports, when he went to the back to gorilla position, what did he say? He said, F 'em. Basically, in the eyes of a lot of folks, when he said F 'em, going back to gorilla, that was his way of saying, screw these allegations, screw these reports, nothing's going to touch me. You know, this is going to fall to the wayside in time. And boy, was he wrong, because more allegations came out. And not only did more allegations come out, but now you have the inclusion of a female talent, on-screen talent, in-ring talent coming out and saying this. You know, or basically agreeing that the same thing happened to her that happened to others. But getting back to what I said, the reason it strangely makes me compare it to the David versus Goliath story from the Bible, and Lord, forgive me for making this comparison. The reason it makes me look at that as a comparison is because when he did that, after he made that appearance on SmackDown, the first day these allegations started to come out, and the reports was, you know, him saying F him when he went through Gorilla. That to me and everybody else pretty much painted him as being like the Goliath of the Philistines. You know, the Philistines thought nothing could take him down. Just like Vince's inner circle, his paparazzi, if you will, his groupies, including himself, didn't think nothing could take him down. That no matter how much the Israelites threw at Goliath, nothing, and the Philistines, nothing could stop them. And yet, the one thing that you don't think can really stop them ends up doing it. And because in David and Goliath, the Israelites sent out David. David volunteered himself to face Goliath. And what did David do? You know, his belief in his Lord and Savior allowed him to pick up this one little pebble, put it in his slingshot, swing it around, you know, and launch it right at Goliath's head. And what did Goliath do when he first saw that? No matter what the interpretation of the story has been, he laughed it off. The Philistines laughed it off. Even those of the Israelites probably didn't think this was going to work, and yet, surprise, surprise, it did. It hit Goliath straight center into his cranium, and basically killed him. And as strange as a comparison as that is here, these allegations, they're kind of like David. You don't think these allegations are going to take someone like Vince McMahon down, but yet here we are. And when you really think about it and you make this comparison, again, you go back to when he said F 'em after he went back to Gorilla that same night and day the first allegations came out. That was him being like Goliath, laughing off the fact that, oh, this little guy and his whatever weaponry is going to hurt me. Ha ha ha, not going to happen. And yet what happens? He gets taken down. Because depending on the media interpretation of the story, David had a very few bits of weaponry to use. He had a stick, a rod, that he threw at Goliath to distract him. And when Goliath was distracted, what did he do? He reached in, put the pebble in the slingshot, swung it around, and shot it straight at Goliath's head. And again, depending on the interpretation you look at, Goliath just laughed that off until it hit him. It hit him straight up and took him out. And that's kind of how you look at it here. That's kind of how you got to look at it here. The fact that first night and day the allegations came out and Vince went into Gorilla after his appearance on SmackDown, his random appearance, and he said F 'em. That was his way of looking at the stick that David had and laughing it off. But then out came these new allegations, bigger than the other one, bigger than the first one, more infoed than the other one. And then that right there, that was the slingshot. Like the first allegations, the first day and night, that was the stick being thrown to distract Goliath. And Goliath just laughed it off. But what did that do? That enabled David to have the time to put the slingshot in, aim it for Goliath's head, and hit directly straight on. And that slingshot was represented in the next allegations. The allegations that basically caused Vince McMahon to have to step down. And yes, there is reports that it was not of his decision, but at the encouragement of those, in the board and around him, that he needs to do this. And he did. And he did. And as strange as a comparison, like I said, as it is to make to the David versus Goliath story, that second story coming out, along with rumors of a third, if not more, damaging story coming, that was the slingshot that knocked him out. That knocked him, the Goliath that he thought he was in wrestling, sports entertainment, down for the count. And it does prove one thing. And others have talked about this too when they've made comparisons to similar multimedia figures that thought they were untouchable. That it doesn't matter how rich you are, how powerful you think you are, no matter how much of an influence you think you are, that you are not invincible. You are not. That when you think, nothing can hurt you, it's the least of the things that comes out and does it. It's the least of the things that comes out and does it. Just, for example, you think you're protected behind this impenetrable force field, this impenetrable field, this shield, that nothing can get through, nothing can break. And yet, it's the one least, damaging thing that can penetrate it and break it. And that's exactly what happened here with Vince. He thought he was Goliath. He thought he could survive the David that was confronting him, and that David proved him wrong, took him out. He thought he was protected behind this impenetrable force field, believing that nothing can get through him or get through to him and take him out. And yet it was the least of the things that came out and did it from his perception that took him out, that penetrated his force field and broke it. And again, what this does is it proves no matter how powerful, how rich, how influential you are not safe. You are like everybody else. You are vulnerable. You are vulnerable to just about anything, especially in this day and age. Because in this day and age, nobody, and I mean nobody's secrets, nobody's secrets, are safe in this world. We don't know, even now, who is responsible for leaking the information out to the Wall Street Journal. But we do know that whoever did it realized that we are in a time where even if this took place years ago, or if not decades ago, it was going to come back to bite someone like Vince McMahon in the butt, and it did. It absolutely did. And Vince is now just the latest of several well-renowned multimedia people out there that have fallen victim to today's technology, to today's world. Because when you get down to it, the internet is out there. Technology is out there today to where just if you think you have hidden, something away that nobody could get access to, that could ruin you, nowadays, you might as well forget about that thought process. You might as well forget about that thought process you had 10, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Because now, in today's world, all secrets, from the past 4, 5, 6 decades are going to come out, and they're not going to paint a pretty picture for you when it's all said and done. They're not going to paint a pretty picture. And for someone like Vince McMahon, that is exactly what's happened. I mean, one could only imagine how much crazier this situation is going to get. One could only imagine how much bigger and how much disgracing the next story is going to be that the Wall Street Journal releases. I mean, when you really think about it, there are other things that Vince controversially has been involved in that are going to come to the surface now because of this. Yeah. Think about this. Jimmy Snuka's situation. Everybody pretty much believes that Vince paid off the officers and the lawyers or whoever to keep Jimmy from spending a life sentence in prison. And yet, that's always been denied. No evidence has ever been found. But yet there's eyewitnesses of Vince going in with a briefcase and walking out with said briefcase, and Jimmy was good. What happens now? What happens now? Does the truth finally come out? Does the truth come out that Vince paid off certain people to keep Jimmy out? Because if that comes out along with these allegations and anything else, Vince, if he thinks he's going to get back into power like some people believe he will, because there are some people, as I've mentioned earlier, and I've mentioned in a previous video, and others have kind of alluded to but not really touched upon, there are people that feel that all Vince is doing, and even Brian Zane and his co-commentator on Power Pro Wrestling, Mr. Ooh La La, they pretty much agree that Vince stepping away, hanging him up, even at the behest of the board or some of his investors, it's nothing more than window dressing. And that all he's doing is just waiting for everything to be in the clear for him to probably pop back up and resume control. Yeah, there are people that believe that. But if the next story of allegations comes out via the Wall Street Journal that's even worse and bigger and more disgracing for him than these other two, I don't know where he goes from here then. I don't know what his mindset's going to be. And along with that, again, if this could come out, who's to say that the truth about him paying off officers and all that to keep Jimmy out of jail, back in the early to mid 80s, isn't going to come to the forefront as well? Because it just might. It just might, if not probably will. And if that comes out along with this bigger, more desecrating allegation of sexual intercourse or coercion or whatever, sexual intercourse, coercion, if you will, comes out, I don't know how Vince comes back from this. I don't know how. I do not know how Vince comes back from this. And honestly, I don't know how the WWE will come back from this. Because when you think about it, Jimmy was under contract to WWE at that time. And all these allegations and everything were done when Vince was running the company. And who knows how far back it goes. This might inevitably have to lead to WWE selling. And whoever they sell to may say, okay, well, now that we own you, you guys can still stay in power as CEO and all that, but we're now the bosses. That potentially is what it could lead to, but we don't know yet. We don't know. All I know, and Lord forgive me for saying this, is the worst is yet to come. The worst for Vince is yet to come. Not just with this allegation, this next allegation, this third one that's supposed to be bigger and worse than the previous two and more disgracing for Vince himself and anybody else that might get named along with him. But there are other things that could get uncovered too. You think these allegations are going to be where it ends? No. These allegations, especially after this next one comes out inevitably, that's just a start. That's just a tipping start of potentially a snowball avalanche of other information and secrets and stuff coming out that Vince didn't want out. I mean, there are reports going around that Kevin Dunn is possibly on the chopping block next, right? Or there are reports coming around that Kevin Dunn might be leaving so soon too, that he's not happy that Vince is gone. But here's the thing too, Dunn has been around with Vince all this time. What if his name comes up in the next allegations? What if his name comes up in any other things, secrets, controversies that Vince didn't want to be known, to the world, become public? What if it happens if his name comes up? What if Bruce Pritchard's name comes up? Then what? I'm not saying they will, but you gotta believe, honestly, they knew about a lot of this. What if their names come up? Not of people that got favors given to them by Vince, with these ladies being, given to them too as toys, as mentioned in the first allegation. But what if the information alludes to the fact that they knew? They don't mention them by name, but maybe by position that they're in. What if it comes out? You see, again, to me, the worst is yet to come. And this is all because Vince and men and women like Vince that have been in power, that have all this money, that think they're invincible, untouchable, it's all because they don't want to come back to reality. They don't want to come back down to earth and realize that you're just as vulnerable as everybody else. You're just as vulnerable as everyone else. And you know it. So stop living in a fantasy fantasy world where you think you aren't. Because you are vulnerable. You're not invincible. You're uninvincible. So to me, the worst is yet to come. I mean, we've seen this kind of stuff play out with other people, like I mentioned, like a Vince McMahon, who thinks they're untouchable and everything. And then later on, when allegations have come out about these other people, men and women, it's one story, then another, and then a third, and then all of a sudden, kaboom! A snowball avalanching proportion of stories and allegations and eyewitnesses come forward and come out. Secrets start to get more revealed. And what happens in the end is these people are never heard from again. No, they don't get killed or they die off or whatever. They just disappear. They remove themselves from the limelight. Do they end up in jail? Maybe, maybe not. Do they end up in prison? Maybe, maybe not. But they remove themselves from the limelight because it's too much. It's too much. And that's what Vince has to look at. That the worst is probably to come, and he has to prepare himself for it. And if he had to step down at the behest of, the board and his investors and even his own family to save himself, to save himself from being in a situation to where he could potentially end up behind bars for the rest of his life because of these secrets, these allegations and stuff. I don't know how he's going to come back if he even thinks of it. Because like I said, there are people that believe, all this is just like Brian Zane and his co-commentator said. There's a lot of people believe that it's window dressing. Nothing more. That it's just to make himself look good. It's a cover-up, so that when things when things clear up and everything is safe and sound again, he could try to get back into power. But if another story comes out, like I said, a third one that's even worse than the other two comes out, how does he bounce back from that? How does he bounce back if that leads as a tipping point, a beginning to other things coming out that he didn't want to be known? Like I said, with the whole Jimmy Snuka thing, situation and other stuff. How does he bounce back? How does he even consider doing it? If he even is thinking about it. If what people believe about this retirement to be true, in some way. How does he come back? How does he come back from that? He doesn't. He doesn't. And if reports are that Kevin Dunn is next, whether it's of his own decision or not, how much does Kevin Dunn know? How much does Kevin Dunn know? Bruce Pritchard know about all this? That they have yet to be, not yet to be, but they have yet to let known to the public. How much did they know? How much have they kept secret? What if they get acknowledged in some way as knowing stuff? Again, how does he bounce? Again, how does this allow Vince to bounce back? It doesn't. So for Vince, his retirement, yeah, it came out of nowhere. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. But again, it is just an example, ladies and gentlemen. It is just an example of the fact that no matter how much of a Goliath you think you are, no matter how, impenetrable you believe you are, that despite everything you've conquered and beaten and survived, that it's always going to be that one thing you least expect to take you out that does it. And for Vince, these allegations fall in that category. They do. But it does send a message, in my opinion, to other people that are in the position Vince is in right now. If you have any secrets, any NDAs you thought you could keep secret, you better start rethinking your strategy. You better start rethinking yourselves, period. Because if a Vince McMahon can go, and be taken down by allegations like this, when he thought nothing can touch him, what about you? I mean, think about it this way. The commissioners of all the sports leagues out there, they probably have secrets and stuff that they've had people sign NDAs for to, keep away from the public from finding out. Don't think that's gonna last forever, my friends, because there could be information that comes out, even if the NDAs are still in effect. There could be information that comes out that takes you out too. The same with someone like a Dana White. Dana White, you don't think he has secrets that he's had people sign NDAs to keep, from getting out to the public? Of course he has. And guess what? Dana White is not impenetrable either. He's not invincible either. He's just like a Vince McMahon. He is, he's just like a Goliath. He can be taken down easily too, once information comes out of whatever he's trying to keep secret. So hopefully this is a wake-up call for all of them, that maybe you shouldn't do these kind of things where you're running a corporation or a business. Hopefully this is a wake-up call for them and any future, CEOs, chairmen, or chairwomen, that are going to be. That if you don't want to go down the same path that someone like Vince has gone down, and have secrets that you thought were NDA proved, that you thought could not come back to haunt you, that end up doing so, you got to rethink your strategy. You got to rethink your mindset, because if not, I'm not going to be surprised that the next names that come out could be any of them that I mentioned. I would not be surprised. But this is one thing I will say. This one thing proves one. But if there's one thing I should say that is proven with this, there's one thing that's proven with this, is never underestimate the one thing that you don't think is going to take you down, to take you out. Do not underestimate that one thing, because inevitably, just like David was underestimated by Goliath and his, to take him out with that slingshot, guess what? All it takes is that one shot to the head and you're down. And that's what happened when David did that to Goliath. And that's what this situation has done to Vince McMahon. So hopefully this is a lesson to send a message. And that message to anybody else that's in a similar position of power, no matter where you are at, do not sign NDAs for things you know are wrong, because you shouldn't even consider doing them at all. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Super chats are open and would be welcome during the premiere. Also check me out at BW Rose's discusses all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also check me out at my Teespring store. Also check me out at VENMO. I have a channel there, BW Roses. Check me out at VENMO at Brian-Warmer-2 to help support me there, and at Cash App at BW Roses 98. Also, check me out at DeviantArt at BVW 1979. And until next time, guys, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think I made a good comparison here? Or do you think I just rambled on for a while? Let me know what your thoughts are, and I am out.